I've had two separate paranormal experiences. When I was at college, I was in my bedroom. The building was modern, and so I was more caught off guard than anything else. I guess you expect ghosts to be chilling out in old stone buildings and whatnot, but not in a modern dorm. I lived in Lincoln, UK, which is a fairly old historic city. I was lying in bed at night playing Pokemon Diamond. I was hunting for shinies. My friend had caught a shiny Spearow, and I was looking for something to counter it. I eventually came across a shiny Marip. Ignoring my slight excitement, Chubby, I started battle. It should have been a routine sleep and throw. I know now that things are never that simple. My Haunter's hypnosis attack missed, and it countered with something paralyzing. For the next 3 turns, Hunter couldn't move, so I just started lobbing Pokeballs. An Ultra Ball caught it and hit it to the ground. It started to rock on the floor. 1, 2, 3. In the corner of my eye, I saw a movement. I looked up above my white DS light, and at the end of my bed was a figure. It was a woman, all in black, just staring. I stared back silently, my brain frozen, much like the path to Snowpoint City. Without looking away, I felt for the light switch and hit the light, and for some reason I assumed that this would make her go away, but it didn't. I shouted, jumped out of bed, and ran. My housemates were all awake in the living room, and they were super concerned. We went back to my room, and there was nothing there. I got mocked for the rest of the year. Roll. On 4 years, and I'm living on my own in China. Non-chain in the winter gets cold and lonely, so being the social butterfly that I am, I decided to buy a bird from the old pet market. The guy gave me a fairly good deal on a majestic bird. I don't know what the English name for this bird is. He assured me that I would be able to teach the bird to talk. It didn't take long for the bird to come used to me, and eventually it would happily sit on my head, hands, or shoulder, but it would never talk. I named it Boromir, after one of the most important characters in Lord of the Rings. As the winter went on, things started to get a bit strange. One night, I was sitting watching Arrested Development when suddenly the bird begins to laugh. Not that weird, right? I mean, everyone laughs at Arrested Development, but this laugh was creepy. It started off high and then got lower, like ha ha ha. A moment later, there was a banging on my door. I opened it, and a Chinese man stood there, staring at me and shouting at me. I had no idea what he was saying, so in typical Chinese fashion, he barged into my flat. He walked over to the balcony, one that I had never even bothered to open, and started shouting shit at me. I walked over the balcony even though it was locked up, was flooded, and outside tap was fully turned on, and water was pouring all down the side of the building. He had to go and get a key. Turns out he was maintenance, opened the balcony, and turned the tap off. It took a while, as the tap had been twisted so tight that it stuck. In the background, Boromir just laughed. The second time I heard this laugh, I wasn't alone. Another foreign teacher from Holland was sitting with me. We were both drinking whiskey and listening to music. And all of a sudden, ha ha ha! We watched as the knob on the stereo turned on its own, first all the way up and then all the way down. At the time, I didn't make the connection with the laughing and the weirdness, but we were both pretty unnerved. One night, I brought a girl back with me. She was scared of birds, so I locked Boromir in his cage and covered the cage with a thick blanket. We went to bed, and I closed the bedroom door. She got a headache and went to sleep. I could hear the bird laughing through the cage and through the wooden door. We woke up to banging on the door. This time, it was the bedroom door. Someone was in my apartment. The girl started to panic in that way. The girls do when there's an intruder, so I grabbed something heavy and went over to the door. I pulled it open. At first I thought there was no one there, but then I looked down. Boromir was at my feet silently staring. The girl didn't come back, and at this point I decided the bird had to go. I put it back in the cage and found a friend who said he would take it. I had to wait a few days. The final night I was in bed and I heard the laughing again. I was filled with dread and waited for something to happen, but nothing did, so I fell asleep. I woke up later to my bedroom door slamming, and I woke up there was someone in my room. She was speaking to me in a very hurried fashion, but there was no sound. She wasn't scary like the Lincoln lady. She was just scared. She ran out of my room, and I followed, hitting as many light switches as possible, and then she was gone. The bird cage was empty, but I could hear the laughter. It was coming from my bedroom. I went back in, and sitting on top of my lamp was Boromir. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I took Boromir to my friend's place. I told him everything that had happened honestly, not a total dick, and he was still eager to have the bird. And this is the part of my story that seems the most far-fetched, but I swear it happened. I gave the bird to my friend, and as I was going to leave, in a little voice, I heard, "I'll miss you." Ha ha ha! That's the end. Oh, except the bird escaped from my friend's house a few months after he had it and was never heard from again. I can only hope that will remain the case. One of the more freaky and exciting haunted house experiences I had was the one I shared with my college best friend and our mutual best friend, plus a couple of other friendly acquaintances along the way. The fourth bedroom saw quite a bit of turnover between those we knew. The stories could get pretty long. We lived there close to a year and a half of our junior and senior year. Paranormal happenings were routines, so I'll just focus on the things we all consider definite happenings. Mostly, these things were the knocking, the baby stuff, the smell, and the basement. Here's the shortest background possible. My BFF, myself, and our mutual best friend rented the super old house, thinking in the early 1900s, situated perfectly on the edge of the bad part of town. The college-only part of town, and on the way to the good part of town, so it was heavily trafficked by classmates. And it was a big party place. My BFF is super into paranormal stuff, but not weird about it, very level-headed. My mutual best friend wasn't heavily oriented either way, but pretty open to that sort of thing. I was an avid denier, despite having a few unexplainable experiences in the past. The knocking started happening pretty much immediately, but none of us figured it out for about a month because we thought it was just happening to us individually. Like one of us would be in our bedroom or the bathroom, and they're coming, knock at the door, we shout, "Come in," or "Who is it?" to no answer, just another knocking, always loud and formal, like 3 perfectly timed knocks. You could call "come in" or whatever, as long as you'd like, but there was never an answer, and never anyone actually there. I thought it was roommates screwing around with us, or old house stuff. I don't know, I was 22. And the others initially thought variations of the same thing. Then we were sitting around smoking a bowl one night, and BFF brings up the knocking, explains what's been going on, and we all look at one another like, "Holy crap, you too." And then we started swapping stories. We laughed, because it didn't feel super threatening with all of us just chatting about it. BFF suggests something paranormal, mutual best friend kind of laughs and says maybe I dismiss it because no way, and we keep going on. The keeps happening mostly random, but now it's happening when other people are actually on either side of the door. So it's 100% not just random hallucinations passed back and forth. The night it got really overt, my BFF and I were sitting on the couch watching TV. Mutual best friend is in his bedroom with the door shut. One of his bedroom doors went directly into the bathroom, one directly into the living room where BFF and I were watching TV, and the third directly into my bedroom. Think sort of a circular layout with doors going through common areas, but also connecting sleeping areas. So BFF and I in the living room can see the shut bedroom door of my mutual best friend, as well as the open bathroom door from the common area. We can clearly see no one in the bathroom, can clearly see our mutual best friend's bedroom door. Suddenly, mutual best friend shouts, "Come in," although we didn't hear knocking. But that often happened. Only the person responding was actually hearing the noise. BFF and I share a glance giggle and go to hit the bowl once again when we hear "Come in," loud and angry from mutual best friend in his bedroom. All right, fair enough, it gets aggravating after a while, but clearly there's no one at either door, so we don't know why he's bothering to get louder. I'm opening my mouth to shout something smartass back at him while looking at BFF when there's a huge bang, like something heavy had been dropped from a long way in mutual best friend's bedroom, and it startled us both badly. Then, less than a second later, our mutual best friend comes flying out of his door, like nearly ripping it off, its hinges, and racing into the living room with us, and he stops at the opposite wall, breathing really heavily, his eyes way too wide, and is looking at us scared to death. We are equally alarmed, first from the noise and then from the look he's giving us, and then his room. We're almost shouting at him to explain, like, what the fuck, and he said he got annoyed because knocking was coming from both doors, from the bathroom and from the living room, and he went to jerk open the bathroom door, but when he started to pull it, it yanked out of his hand and closed, like, way harder than it should have done, way harder than should have been possible, and that was the noise. And it also scared him, and nearly pissing himself, so he bolted. The knocking continued randomly through the rest of our time in the house. Even guests would hear it and respond all the time. Eventually, most people who were at our place more than once a week knew the story, and our advice was pretty universally not to respond to it, but to walk the doors and open them instead. This wasn't anything clever. We just got super tired of hearing people shouting come in from different rooms at all hours of the day. Then there was the baby stuff. These experiences had a lot more feel of something possibly sentient, or I don't know, intelligent, than the knocking. It's hard to explain, but hopefully it will make more sense once I've told the stories. But these stories feel a lot more stereotypical ghost movie behavior than some of the other creepier stuff that was a lot more obtuse or random. So again, this stuff started happening almost at once. But we didn't realize it because we thought it was legitimate, or that it was just any single one of us being mistaken or possibly high or crazy. It always happened when anyone was laying down, never heard it any other place or time. So mine, I was laying down midday about to take a nap, and I heard a baby crying. It sounded very close, like right outside the house. I went to BFF's bedroom, right beside mine. Sounded like it was coming from there, and listened. Still sounded right outside, like the window. I looked out the window, hear it clearly, but see no source. There's a house right next to us, but windows were down, and it still sounded super clear. I chalked it up to a super loud baby and weird acoustics and thought nothing of it. It happened a few more times, kept being weird because it was so clear, but didn't have a definite source, and more during the day than night, but I still chalked it up to neighbors having a very loud baby. I spoke to my BFF about it one afternoon, and passing, she looks and says she's noticed it too. It's so weird because it sounds so close. I agree that it's weird. Forget about it again, because what the fuck are we going to do about it? We speak to our mutual best friend, and he agrees that he's heard it, didn't really care to check it out though. A few days later, he returns and says that he passed the neighbors and sitting on their porch. He found that there were 3 fairly elderly African-American gentlemen with no baby inside. Mutual best friend paused to ask if they had a baby around often or had heard a baby crying during the day. Both of the men give adamant refusals to both questions. So me, my BFF, and our mutual best friend at this point are feeling fairly crazy overall. BFF is sure it's a ghost or multiple ghosts. Mutual best friend is sure that it's something. I'm mostly annoyed, but I'm also not a total idiot, so I'm admitting that something is weird. So we start asking people who spend a lot of time in the house, close friends, dealers, buyers, significant others, people allowed to chill at our spot between classes. And we ask if they're having any of these experiences. Turns out, oh, yes, but, again, most of them happen during the day. Always when they're laying down, on the couch, in a bed, or whatever. But no one ever heard it initially while they were up and about or walking around. We circle the house inside and out dozens of times, and we hear it with different people at different times trying to pinpoint where it's coming from. The best way to describe it was if you were standing in my BFF's bedroom, it sounded like it was just on the other side of the exterior wall to the house. But if you went to that exact point outside of the house, It sounded like the crying was coming just from the other side inside my BFF's room. That's where it was the loudest, and no one else could detect it coming any more strongly from any other direction. We never did find the source, but we all agree something weird was happening there. About 2 weeks ago, I was in bed trying to sleep. It was about 2 a.m. When I'm finally dozing off, I hear my door creak open. A strange walking sound approached me, and then I felt breathing on my neck. This remained for about 3 seconds, and in the footsteps trailed back to the door, and it closed. There are 2 things about my door. 1, when it opened slowly, it made a loud creaking sound that's almost cliché. 2, when you close the door, the handle can sometimes get stuck, as in it doesn't twist back to automatically close the door properly. You have to manually twist it most of the time, and it makes a lot of noise when you do. For me, it's muscle memory to do this. Or, I open the door in a way where the handle does go back automatically. When the sun rose and I felt confident enough to approach my door, the handle had been twisted so that it wasn't closed properly. Now I always make sure to close it properly because one night my door slammed open scared the shit out of me. Neither of my parents said that they had been in the room, and it sounded like someone grabbed the handle and pulled it closed, like you regularly would during the day. I don't know what this is, but it fucking scared me, and I hope it doesn't happen again. Back when I was in college about 7 years ago, I had to move from an apartment to another one very last minute because, well, I was a lazy college student and hadn't made any plans. My parents were in town, so we were looking for something quick. Luckily, we found something pretty cheap and somewhat nice right in front of the university. They were thrilled. I was just happy that this was over, so I move in, this kind of 4-bedroom basement, which was already furnished. They said the last tenant had canceled last minute, and I only needed it for the 3 months of the summer, so he was giving us a great deal. The first room was the main room, which consisted of a living room plus a little table to eat. Immediately on the right of it was the kitchen and then the bathroom. The bedroom was on the left, and there was some kind of weird and small hall or connection joining it to the living room. Since the start, I always felt kind of uneasy about that bedroom for some reason, and I prefer to sleep in the living room since there was already a comfy sofa bed in there, and there was no windows in the bedroom. Throughout the semester, I felt countless times that someone was watching me from the bedroom when I was alone, either watching TV here, playing video games. It was a weird and eerie feeling, to the point where I preferred closing the door leading to the bedroom altogether. I wasn't home that much, and sometimes I slept at friends' houses, but every time I came back, it just felt like I wasn't alone in that apartment. There were never any sounds or sights, just a strange feeling. I spoke of this to my friends, and they laughed since I was never the superstitious kind, so I kind of brushed it off, thought nothing of it, and then when I finished the semester, I just moved on with my life, until about 2 years ago, one of my friends from college texted me. He said, "Hey, is this number the door number you lived at in that creepy basement back in uni?" I was like, "Yeah, why?" He then sent me a picture of an old local newspaper page. He had been looking through them at the library, looking for a picture of him back in his college football days. It was the obituary section from 2009. The picture of a young and good-looking female student. Next to her picture was the picture of a door and in a dress, which I recognized very well as being the one I had lived in. As it turns out, she had hung herself in the bedroom closet. My house was haunted, and one week it was absolutely off the chain. It was so creepy. The first night I was woken up by hearing these light bangs over and over again, but then my son started screaming. I ran into his room, and he said, "Mommy, please make the drawers stop. They keep opening and closing by themselves." The next night, I went to get my newborn baby's bottle warmed up, and as I bent over the table, the light bulbs in the chandelier over me all exploded, and glass came raining down on me. Third night, a balloon was ripped out of my son's hand and floated all over the house. It went into the basement, then upstairs to the attack. The craziest thing is that you could see the string being pulled along. The next night, my neighbor called me at 3 a.m. asking if I was okay. She said that I need to check the kids and that the police were on the way because she had called them. She said there were a dozen people surrounding my house, but when I looked outside, I saw no one. The police came, and there were no signs of anybody on our property. The next night, my other neighbor started pounding at my door, asking me why that lady in my attic kept staring at him through the window. Where the window was, there was no flooring. No one could even get to that window, even if there had been somebody in my attic. But it all finally came to a head when I went to take a shower. I was alone in the house, and I put my newborn in the middle of my bed. I had swaddled her tight and put cushions all around her. She was also laying in her side pillow that kept her sleeping on her side. When I got out of the shower, something had picked her up off the side sleeper pillow and moved her to the outside of the cushions, dangerously close to the edge. There was no way in this world a swaddled newborn could lift herself up out of that pillow and over the top of a big body cushion. There's no way. I started screaming at whatever was in my house. I said, "That's it, you're out of here. You will never mess with my kids ever." As I said that, I got Jesus Christ on my side, had the house blessed, never had a problem again. We moved, though, and the next 2 people that bought our house moved out after just a couple of months. The house is currently vacant. They say something isn't right there, and they keep giving the house back to the bank. I did not believe in ghosts. Sure, I was entertained by the notion, but anyone who came out and stated that they believed in ghosts, I dismissed as a new age hippie or whatever. And then I lived in a haunted house. It started out as little things. The bathroom door would open violently if anyone ever closed the latch, so often that we came to count on it. I asked my roommate if he ever noticed a red light in the spare bedroom, which I always did. When walking up the stairs in the dark, he said he did as well. I would always go into the spare room to investigate, but I could never find the source of the light. These things I could sort of explain away, but then weirder things started to happen. One night I was sitting in the living room with my girlfriend and my roommate when I noticed the shape of a woman's face appear in the pane of glass of the window in the other room. We all witnessed this. Even then, I tried to explain it away as being a trick of a light. What finally convinced me that something was happening was one time when I was brushing my teeth, something tugged insistently on my sleeve, and I'm 100% positive that I didn't catch it on anything. I was in the middle of the bathroom. Have you ever been fishing? It was like a fish was nibbling on the line, except it was on my t-shirt sleeve. That freaked me out, still. Stranger things have happened. We hear footsteps upstairs while we were home alone. I often saw shadows out of the corner of my eye. One time, I even saw a shadow while looking right at it in the middle of the room, not up against the wall. I moved around just to make sure for 5 minutes or so. Twice, while heading up the stairs for my bedroom, I heard a woman's voice say good night over my shoulder. The strangest thing that happened was New Year's Eve 3 years ago. My roommate and I were hosting a party and waiting for people to show up, sitting in the living room. Suddenly, I felt something brush against my arm, and the light bulb in the lamp I was sitting next to exploded. There were a few other things that happened, and some I'm sure I'm forgetting, but the fact is too many strange things happened for it to be a coincidence. I have since moved out of the house, but my belief remains the same. Something strange is happening there. From the ages of about 5 to 12, I lived in what I believed to be a haunted house. My first experience was when I was probably 8 or so. I had woken up just as the sun was about to rise, and my bed was directly next to a window. I sat up and peered out the blinds and saw the glow from the sun starting to rise. I also saw what seemed to be a maybe 40-year-old man standing on the curb staring directly into my window. I was startled and quickly pulled my head away from the blind. I sat there for about 10 seconds before I pulled a blind slightly to the side to look again. This time, the man was about a foot away from my window. I screamed in horror and moved away from the window. My mother came in, but no one was outside the window when she looked. The man looked slightly older and was wearing reading glasses. His complexion was white and translucent. He looked like a regular man, but the second time I looked out, his mouth was gaping wide open. It was almost as if he had broken his lower jaw, and it was hanging from his mouth. A couple of years later, I had my second experience. I walked out of my bedroom during the night to get a drink from the kitchen. The lounge room was in the center, and the kitchen was joined to it off to the left. On the right side of the lounge room was the front door. I walked down the hall to the entrance of the lounge room. My mother had left the light on during the night so that if any of the kids woke up, they could move around easily. As I got to the entrance of the lounge, I noticed a figure to the right of me near the front door. A very tall woman was walking towards me. I stood frozen in fear as she walked past me and seemed to reach out and grab something of a corkboard in the kitchen. She then turned around and walked straight past me again through the front door. As she did all of this, she did not take her eyes off of me. She stared directly at me the entire time. She had the exact same complexion as the man, and I could clearly see wrinkles on her face. She was very tall, maybe close to 7 feet. She had brown hair and a white gown on. I was fixated on her, but out of my peripheral, I could see what looked like a piece of paper. It must be what she had taken from the corkboard. The way she stared at me the entire time still horrifies me 20 years later. Telling the story to my family when I was about 18, a few others said they had had different encounters. My brother saw 2 dark figures sitting at the dining room table, seeming to be peeling potatoes. My sister saw a little boy poke his head around the door frame, and she sat in the bathtub. We moved out, and life went on. But I'm convinced that place is still haunted. This story happened at my old house in Toronto. 3 of us lived on the main floor of a house, and a stranger lived in the basement. We didn't know much about the guy in the basement, besides the fact that he was a gamer and smoked a lot of weed. Almost every night, I could hear him below me coughing up a storm as if he were about to die. I would hear this quite often, and I began to realize this wasn't really directly below my room. He appeared to be coughing in a room under our garage. Sure enough, my roommate and I went to the garage and jumped down and could hear the hollow room below us. Eventually, this guy decided to move out, and we were able to move our friend to the basement. It would be our first time down there, and I was excited to see this weird room under the garage. Our friend took us into the laundry room, which was under my room, where we discovered a creepy little red door that LED to a cement room filled with trash and old furniture. It was basically a dungeon. Was this where he had smoked weed every day? It was full of mold and seemed dangerous to breathe in the air, not the exciting room we had hoped for. Our friend didn't understand our need to see the weird room because he was pissed off at the state of the apartment. I was surprised since it appeared the other guy moved out and our friend moved right in. After a day, there wasn't much time to clean. But then my friend told me that this guy had been gone for 2 weeks already and nobody had bothered to clean it. I thought about this for a moment, and then I got a cold chill down my back. The last 2 weeks that this guy was gone, I could still hear the horrible coughing coming from the creepy room. I held a real estate license just to help out family members. I created their website, traveled on location to take pictures before possibly listing it. I was their tech guru, basically. I maintained the equipment. There was this one piece of property. The only thing I was told before traveling with them was that the owner had died and the family had decided to sell the house and the property. While I was attempting to photograph the property, which adjoined to a field containing a cemetery, I experienced all kinds of equipment failure. I knew that it had fresh batteries and many media cards. I switched the batteries out several times, and the media cards too, but it would refuse to work. The screen kept reporting a camera failure or a faulty file or an inability to save. It was frustrating. So I decided to rapid-fire snap some shots, no matter how many times the camera shut down. My two tag team realtor relatives returned to the car and announced that they were leaving. It was a matter-of-fact statement. No rebuttal allowed. They were struck by silence. I just said okay, and we all climbed into the vehicle. Breaking the silence, I related the odd equipment failures and taking photos, but they didn't respond to me. Not a word was spoken. It was eerily quiet. No real estate banter as normal, until we reached the bottom of the mountain, and I thought to ask if the property was being listed, and if so, I offered to return to take proper pictures. They told me that the family wanted to sell, but that they were conflicted because as the elderly man was dying, he told them that if they attempted to sell the homestead, he would return to haunt them. Something happened there to them, and they weren't telling me about it. Once home, I took the media card and transferred the images to my computer. There were only 2 images captured during my frantic session. One was of a mist above an upright gravestone, and another in which there was a black figure in the tree line of the property where horses had been spooked earlier from what I was told. It was somebody in a dark, long coat. They were translucent and they had horns on the top of their head. Yep, I was glad it wasn't being listed, or at least not by our team. Apparition's spirit energy, or whatever you'd like to call it, followed me on a regular basis. Friends of mine told me it was a gift. It's not one that I was willing to accept. I eventually laid down my camera, stopped picture taking for realtors or anyone else, and never took it up again. Today, I don't even like to pose for pictures. I lived in a house with 4 girls and 4 animals in college. One night I happened to have the house to myself, which was fabulous because I had a paper to write. So I'm in my bed with my laptop and I hear a scratch at the door. It's the dog Nico, and he's shaking and whining. As soon as I open the door, the 2 cats Ralph and Baynor streaking behind him and jump on my bed. I squeeze in between all of them and resume my study. Suddenly, Ralph's hair stands on end and Miko starts to whine. Banner's claws are digging into my leg as soon as I hear footsteps coming in the hallway. It's a pretty short hallway, maybe about 20 feet, but the footsteps keep walking and walking and walking, past where the outer wall of the house into the next-door neighbor's house would be. Nico starts growling on the footsteps, turn around, and I hear them sprinting back in our direction, and then a door slams shut. By this point, my heart is racing, and Miko is barking up a storm, so I grab a baseball bat and walk upstairs. Nobody was home, but me and the animals. And if you're wondering about the 4th animal, it's a hamster, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't charging up the hallway. I was staying the night at a friend's house when I was about 13. We were watching The Shining with her older sister and another friend when I saw a black figure in my peripheral vision. I turned my head all the way to the right and watched the solid black figure in the shape of a man wearing a cowboy hat walk from one side of the house to the other. I didn't say anything to my friend when it happened. I thought maybe my mind was just playing tricks on me, because the movie was scary after all. After the movie, my friend's sister and the others all left the house to stay elsewhere. My friend's parents were out of town. In the middle of the night, I woke up to someone stomping up the stairs towards the room we were sleeping in. We thought maybe it was her sister. Maybe she had just come home and ran upstairs to bed. We went to check, but found no one. We heard the stomping a few more times, and then a really loud bang on the wall. The wall between our bedroom and the outside of the house on the second story. My friend looks me straight in the eyes and says, "Did you see the man earlier?" I swear no one else was home, and my friend was just as terrified as I was. We hid under the blankets and didn't come out until we could see sunlight. This isn't my only encounter with unexplained or paranormal things happening. My dad's house when I was a kid was scary to say the least, haunted, if you believe in that kind of thing. We used to see a man in military uniform in the long hallway leading towards my brother's room. The security alarms would go off for no reason, like someone was opening and closing a door over and over again. And one time we had a decorative plate fly off a shelf and hit a mirror clear across the room. I don't know what I saw, but I hope I don't see it again. So first, here's some background. I'm currently living with my best friend, we'll call her Kate, her fiancé Henry, and his best friend Sam. We live in Henry's house. It's a 2-story house with a basement. The basement is pretty much an open plan, the only defined room being a storage room. On the ground floor, right after you enter the front door, the stairs leading to the second floor are right in front of you. The room Kate uses as an office, as to the right. A room they have their dog in is to the left, and the kitchen and living room are at the back of the house. Once you go up the stairs, the bathroom that Sam and I share is at the top. If you go right, my room is to the right, and Sam's is on the left. If you go left after going up the stairs, there's a short hallway. To the immediate left is a room that we leave closed that they use to let their cat in. And at the end of the hallway is Kate and Henry's room. Behind our house is a creek that flows all year round. I know that's a lot of information, but I promise that it's important to the story. Kate and I are in our last year of uni, and up until this point, I had been living on campus. They moved into this house about a year before I moved in and told me I could live with them and only pay my part of the utilities. The house is only about a half hour from Canvas, so I jumped on the offer. I moved in towards the middle of August 2018. Kate has been having experiences in this house long before I moved in and has a long history with paranormal experiences in general, most of them not being good, a few causing her physical harm. She's an empath and is agnostic and can usually see entities. I have also had some paranormal experiences, but it's usually been benign, usually just sightings, but I do believe in the paranormal even though I'm Catholic. Henry and Sam are both completely skeptical and don't believe in any of this, which is frustrating. Now for the ongoing situation. A few weeks after moving in, I started noticing that something was just off. I would constantly feel creeped out, have that feeling of being watched, hear noises that weren't caused by anything that I could find. This went on for a few weeks, and I told Kate what I had been experiencing. She told me it had been happening for a long time. She also told me that she had been constantly followed by an entity that we both believed to be a demon and that it was terrifying her. One night, towards the end of November, I was hanging out with Kate in the room that she uses for an office while she was doing her homework. Henry and Sam weren't home as they had left to go get dinner. She was taking a break and had her back to the computer facing me. As I had been sitting behind her while she worked, all of a sudden, there were what sounded like footsteps coming down the stairs next to us. We both froze and stared at each other and then slowly turned our heads. I felt nauseous as I heard Kate ask me, "Please tell me you can see that." I felt nauseous as I heard Kate ask me, "Please tell me you can see that." I couldn't see anything except a shadow on the wall, but Kate could see it in full detail as this was the entity that had been following and terrorizing her. She described it to me as having the face of a baby or child, but looking dead and skinny and about as tall as I am. I am 6 foot tall. Kate is 5'4". Its body was completely black and had the figure of a woman. We then started hearing bangs and things falling and breaking. We were terrified. A lot more happened that night, and we decided to sage the house the next day, since the boys wouldn't be home. The next day, we opened all the windows and the front and back doors of the house, and starting with the basement, began to sage the house. The basement was mostly uneventful. We went to the ground floor and could tell that something wasn't happy. I would go into the different areas in front of Kate, since she was the one saging house, so that the entities couldn't attach themselves to her quite as easily, and so that they would attack me first. We finished the ground floor, and we had to mentally prepare ourselves to save the second floor, as we could see the dark entity staring down at us from the second floor. We began the ascent, and it fled into Kate's room. We started with my shared bathroom. Then when it is Sam's room, we then went into my room, only to realize that we had forgotten my closet, so we went back to my room to redo it and do the closet this time. Then we went to Kate's room and saged it, seemingly with no issues. The entity wasn't there, so we had assumed that it had left through the window that was open. Once we finished, we went through and closed the windows of doors and went kitchen to make ourselves some food before showering, only to realize we forgot the cabinet and kitchen. The entity hid itself there. Luckily, Kate had holy water from a recent trip to the Basilica Immaculate Conception in DC, and I was able to get the thing out using that. After that, Kate could see all the entities we pushed out of the house lurking by or in the creek from the kitchen windows, and we thought it was done. A few months passed, everything felt mostly better, but the house still felt off. We put amethyst and onyx crystals around the house and in front of our mirrors, TVs, and computers to deter the entities from returning. We could feel something watching us, but couldn't see it. If we returned to the house after the sun had set, the areas of darkness near the house would be a lot darker than they should have been. It's been slowly getting worse since we saged the house. And then we come to this week. Sunday night, when I got back from spending the weekend at home, I saw a shadow figure standing in one of the windows by my bedroom where there is nothing to cast a shadow. I put it out of my mind and hurried inside. The rest of the night was mostly uneventful, but I was so creeped out that I slept with a light on. Kate hasn't been seeing any entities at this point, just me. Monday night was the apex. Once again, it was just Kate and I at home as the boys were out somewhere for dinner. Kate was in her bathroom taking a shower, and I was in my bathroom brushing my teeth. I thought I heard Kate calling my name from the room that used to be the cat's room, and apparently, at the same time I heard my name being called, Kate had heard a deep door slam, which after testing several doors, closing them the same way, it was that room's door. We went into the room together to investigate, and it was freezing cold, which is unusual because that room is usually the warmest room in the house. I have a cross in my room that I usually have above my bed, and at this point I had gone to grab it so that I could feel a little bit better. We decided we needed to put holy water on the doors and windows as a temporary protection, but it was on the ground floor. Kate couldn't go downstairs because she was so scared, so I gave Kate my cross, and I went downstairs to grab the holy water. As I reached the ground level, I felt the uncontrollable urge to look into the room that the dog stays in. In that room, there are 2 large cabinets with mirrors in front of them, one of them being in plain sight of the entryway. There was something in the mirror looking at me, and I instantly felt sick and felt like crying. I hurried and grabbed the holy water, rushing back upstairs. Kate put crosses on the doors and had me do the windows, as she was afraid to look outside. When I did, I can't even describe the thing I saw. There weren't eyes, just blackness that seemed to glow as it stared dead into my eyes. The features were sunken and dark, almost like a floating head. I froze, and then quickly put the cross on the window. It was there for every window except my room. When it came to doing the windows in my room, it was standing in front of the house, staring at me. Honestly, I'm scared shitless, and I know that Kate is too. I haven't been able to sleep without a light on, afraid of what could be there in the dark. We plan on staging the house again soon when the boys aren't home. We don't know what to think. This entity that I'm seeing isn't the one that Kate originally saw. It's something else. I'll update you guys as things happen. In the meantime, what do you think this means?